Good morning to you. Happy Thursday. It's 4th of July. Woo! This is, let's see, 1776 to today. What is that? I don't know. 24 plus 24, 48 years. Pretty soon we'll be celebrating 250 years. What are you going to do for the 4th of July today? Normally, we try to go somewhere and see the fireworks. Last year, we went onto the top of a mountain and to see if we could see the fireworks on a mountain, and we didn't see anything. You can't really see a mountain from here. So, I mean, they're little, tiny little fireworks. I've been to Benson before. I've been to Patagonia before. Of course, we used to do this great 4th of July celebration in Vail where we would shoot off fireworks at the Del Lago Golf Course. I think we did that for about 5 years, 6 years. It took about 200 people to pull that off, and we had to raise $35,000. But it was well worth it. And it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of, and my kids would come and enjoy that. And it seemed to be a great community thing. But once they built the Meritage homes to the east, we couldn't do it anymore. We looked at the fairgrounds. We talked with them, but it was going to cost like $80,000 to rent the fairground, and we're like, no, we can't raise $80,000. So maybe someday in the future there'll be a park in Vail, and we can do that. It'll be fun. There is land available in the Wash that was reserved for a park, but Pima County is not building parks anymore, so you have to figure out a different way to build a park. Yeah. So anyway, I enjoy 4th of July. We used to do a parade on the 4th of July here in Vail from the church to Del Lago Golf Course. My parents had a cabin in Heber Overgaard, and they had a small little town parade. Their 4th of July celebration was at the high school, and the high school was surrounded by cliffs. And so when the fireworks would go off, it would reverberate around the cliffs, and then they'd have a little pig, a greased pig race. I remember that. All right, so we've got a lot of birthdays to get into. Why don't we do that first? Because I'm not going to be here next week. I'm flying out Sunday. I'll be back either Friday or Saturday of the following week or of next week. So I'll be gone 5 days. So I'll be gone. Today's the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. I'll be gone till the 15th. And the 15th, on Monday the 15th, that birthday is my wife's birthday. So we can go all the way up to those birthdays. So let's just do our birthdays. Today's the 4th is Rachel Curlin and my nephew, Nathan. Happy birthday, Nathan. I believe he turns 30 today. Yeah, I think he does. And so he's the same age as my daughter, Lydia. And he is a musician. He graduated from an elite music school in Minnesota and has a band with some other guys called Hippocampus, and they travel the world singing. I mean, they're like a real band, I don't know if they're the Beatles, but they're like the Beatles, right? All right, so happy birthday, Nathan. The 5th, which is tomorrow, is Marsha Roweeder, and then the 7th, which is Sunday, is Tamara Zizzo. Roger Smith, Monday. Alicia McKean is on Tuesday. Alex Kaczynski is 11th, and that's it. So those are the birthdays we have. So happy birthday to all of you, and may you have a blessed birthday. So let's get into it. Let's see, is there any other housekeeping things? Yeah, so we won't meet Monday through Friday of next week. I'll be going to Chicago, hoping that I have a grandbaby. I know this is a risk, but it's the only time I can get up there. I think my daughter would rather have me there before the baby's born than after the baby's born, because she's very pregnant, she's very ready to have the baby, and she needs help. So that's what I'm doing. All right, so we are in 1 Kings chapter 9. Solomon has built the temple. He's dedicated the temple. He had this wonderful prayer. He had this wonderful dedication. And now what? I mean, if your whole life's thing is to build a temple, it's believed that it took about 24 years from the time he was inaugurated till he built the temple. So This is a large chunk of your life. What was I doing 24 years ago? I was I was thinking about changing careers. That's what I was doing. I was 38, living in Denver with 4 kids. Living the dream, working hard. All right, so let's let's see what the next step is for Solomon in his life. Okay. Well, actually, let me just hold on a second. I got to get rid of a couple things here. Okay, yeah. All right. Let's go chapter 9, verse 1. When Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord and the royal palace and had achieved all he had desired to do, the Lord appeared to him a second time as he appeared to him at Gibeon. So he's finished the temple and the royal palace, and he's achieved all that he has desired to do. So he's a person who is driven to get this temple built and his palace built. But now both of those things are done. So what do you do with the rest of your life when your 2 greatest achievements are done? Well, if you're a person of God, then you grow in your faith. You help the people grow in their faith. You don't just sit idly by. Idle hands are the devil's playground. And I think the Lord knows this about Solomon, and so he's going to appear to him. Now, if you remember, he appeared to him at Gibeon at the beginning of his monarchy, but now he's appearing a second time, which is a huge blessing. And the Lord's going to tell Solomon a few things. The Lord said to him, verse 3, I have heard the prayer and plea you have made before me. That's right, he just did this prayer. I have consecrated this temple which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. As for you, if you walk before me faithfully with integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and do all I command and observe my decrees and laws, I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father when I said, you shall never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel. So God says to the Lord, notice that this is capital L-O-R-D, so this is the actual proper name of God, Yahweh. And he says to you, if you walk before me faithfully. Now, can anybody walk before God faithfully? Well, he says, as your father did. So even though David sinned, and we know David sinned with Bathsheba, and he had other sins in his life, he wasn't a perfect human being, but he did have integrity of heart and uprightness. And this is what the Lord is decreeing. Not that you are perfect, but that you walk with integrity of heart, that you don't turn away from God, that you're an upright person, and that you observe the decrees and laws. And this is what God demanded of David. And by all accounts, God was pleased with David's life, even though he sinned. And the reason is because David always put God first. Even in the moments of temptation where he failed and moments of fear, at his heart, David desired to follow God. He was just contained in a body that was racked with original sin. And when you are in a body that's racked with original sin, the things that you do don't always come out the way that they should. We are not perfect human beings. And yet, God was still pleased with David. And he just asks the same of Solomon. Just be like your father David. Put me first, have integrity, do the things I've commanded you to do, follow my laws, follow my decrees, and I will remain in this temple, and you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel. But, says the Lord, verse 6, but if you or your descendants turn away from me and do not observe the commands and decrees I have given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them, and will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name. Israel will then become a byword and an object of ridicule among all peoples. This temple will become a heap of rubble. All who pass by will be appalled and will scoff and say, why has the Lord done such a thing to this land and to this temple? People will answer, because they have forsaken the Lord their God, who brought their ancestors out of Egypt and have embraced other gods, worshiping and serving them. And that is why the Lord brought all this disaster on them. So it's not a hard request. It's basically to put God first, follow the laws, follow the commandments. If you don't follow the laws and commandments, repent of your sin, come back to God, do a sacrifice. Put God first in all your things. And it's the same is true for us. If we simply put God first in all the things that we do, then his grace and his mercy and his peace alights on us in such a way that while we're not perfect, he walks with us. And he walks with us because of Jesus. I mean, Jesus did all the work to bring us into the presence of God. And when we fail, Jesus, covers our sin, makes us white as snow. But that doesn't mean that we're off the hook to not follow God. We still live in this world, and we still have trials and tribulations and struggles, and so we follow God in all things with our heart. That our heart wants to follow God, even though we're trapped in this body that has a hard time following God all the time. And if you do not follow me, then I will reject the temple. It'll be destroyed. People will scoff at it while they walk by. I wonder if people do that today. I go to see the temple in the Holy Lands and ridicule the Jews for not, keeping faithful to God. Of course, the Jew, Jesus, came and was the fulfillment of all the Old Testament. And so now the temple doesn't reside in Jerusalem. It resides in all of us because we are the temple. We worship God inwardly. We're not tied to Jerusalem anymore. And the temple stays for a long time until the Babylonians destroy the temple, and then it's rebuilt by Cyrus, and then that one is destroyed in 70 AD after Jesus. And yeah, I think people look at it as more of an artifact than, I don't know if they ridicule the Jews. I think if you're a non-Jew living in Jerusalem, you don't necessarily believe that the Jews have a right to the temple, and there's a lot of fighting and things like that. But I think most people who go to visit the temple are there to visit a historic artifact of extreme significance. So I don't think there's much ridicule today. But I don't know. Verse 10. At the end of 20 years, during which Solomon built these two buildings, the temple of the Lord and the royal palace, King Solomon gave towns in Galilee to Hiram. Hold on. So we're kind of done with that story. So God tells, this is a direct revelation from God to King Solomon to remind Solomon of the prayer that he just prayed. Lord, be with us in this situation, this situation, this situation. Lord, be with us. And so the Lord comes down. He says, I've heard your prayer. And yes, I will be with you. But if you don't follow my commands and decrees, then there's nothing I can do. Because following my demands and decrees isn't just to please me, but it's to make you aware of who I am. And it makes it easier for me to walk with you if you follow my demands and decrees. But if you don't follow my demands and decrees, then I don't have a fertile soil in your community in which to work with. So you need to turn to me. You need to follow me. You need to be aware of my presence. You need to come together as a people and learn the laws and decrees and live them. And so God tells this to Solomon, and Solomon, he doesn't answer. He just, but he just says that if you don't do that, then I will forsake you. So this, even though Solomon prayed it, God came to him and said, okay, I hear your prayer, do it. Now, you may know that in the history of the kings, not all the kings do it. So there's that disconnect. It's this cycle where things are good, but then we turn away from God, and then things are bad, and so we turn back to God, and then things are good, and it's just this cycle that goes on and on. All right, now we're going to learn about another thing that Solomon did, and this is with King Hiram. Let's see. Yeah. Verse 11. King Solomon gave 20 towns in Galilee to Hiram, the king of Tyre, because Hiram had supplied him with all the cedars and juniper and gold he wanted. But when Hiram went from Tyre to see the towns that Solomon had given him, he was not pleased with them. What kind of towns are these that you've given me, my brother? He asked, and he called the land Kabul, a name they have to this day. Now Hiram had sent the king 120 talents of gold. Kabul means good for nothing land. Kabul, the land of good for nothingness. If you remember, Solomon had sent for Hiram, the king of Tyre, for all the cedars of Lebanon. He came, I think he brought a lot of wood, and it was used to build the temple, and I think the palace also, but for sure the temple. And I guess in payment for that, he gives him land. But then Hiram sends to the king 120 talents of gold, which is a lot of gold. And Hiram seems to be not pleased with this land of Galilee. Let's see. I'm tired to see this. We supplied him with 20 towns in Galilee. Now, who else is from Galilee? Remember? Jesus. That's where he went and did his ministry. And he was from a small town of Nazareth, right? And these are backwater towns, not a lot of population, probably not worth a lot. And King Solomon just gives them these little tiny towns, which Hiram says are good for nothing towns. What's interesting is that just because it's good for nothing now doesn't mean that it's not good for nothing in the future. I remember, but I've heard the story of Las Vegas. There's this nothing piece of dirt out in the middle of the desert. And it was developed into what it is today. It's one of the most valuable pieces of property. So the value of property isn't necessarily just the location, because the location of Las Vegas is like the worst in the world, but what the town has to offer and making a town. When you make a town, you can make it out in the middle of nowhere and still make a bustling, hustling town. The Saudi government is making a new town called the Line, and it's a linear. It's 500 feet wide, and it goes off of the Gulf, whatever that Gulf is, and goes out into. It starts at the coast and it goes into Saudi Arabia, and they're going to build this linear town. And in the bottom, it's going to have a light rail, and then people will live along the walls, and there'll be parks and walking and all that sort of thing. And it's supposed to be covered and shaded, and it'll be kind of a whole new concept for a town. And the desire is that they can create a town that's as efficient and enjoyable to live as possible. Because Saudi Arabia is also like Las Vegas, I think. I've never been to Saudi Arabia, but my understanding is a lot of dust and dirt and heat. And if you want to make a town to live in, all you have to do is invest some money into it. So even though it may not look like a lot now, Hiram, Galilee becomes an important town. And these 20 towns, just hold on to them. You never know what they may be worth. But Hiram, even though he's not happy with the towns, he still sends the king 120 talents of gold. All right, verse 15. Here is the account of the forced labor King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his own palace and terraces, the wall of Jerusalem and Hazor, Megiddo and Gezer. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had attacked and captured Gezer. He had set it on fire. He killed its Canaanite inhabitants and then gave it as a wedding gift to his daughter Solomon's wife. And Solomon rebuilt Gezer. He built up Lower Beth Horon, Baalath, Tadmor in the desert within his land, as well as all his store cities and the towns for his chariots and for his horses, whatever he desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and throughout all the territory that he ruled. So I guess he got Gezer back from the Egyptian Pharaoh, who apparently had conquered it. But now that, what's he going to do with it? He's in Egypt. This is in Israel. So he decides to give it as a wedding present back to Solomon. So when Solomon marries Pharaoh's daughter, the wedding present is this town. So Solomon's great. He rebuilds the town. It seems like Solomon likes to build stuff. He built the palace, he built the temple. He likes to be active in doing stuff. And Solomon, if you just remain active and do stuff and keep your hands busy, you'll be fine. But the moment that you kind of take your eye off of God and start doing things that are not pleasing to God, that's where there's an opening. Verse 20. There were still people left from the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites. These people were not Israelites. Solomon conscripted the descendants of all these people remaining in the land, whom the Israelites could not exterminate, to serve as slave labor, as it is to this day. So he gets slaves. But Solomon did not make slaves of any of the Israelites. They were his fighting men, his government officials, his officers, his captains, and the commanders of his chariots and charioteers. They were also the chief officials in charge of Solomon's projects, 550 officials supervising those who did the work. So as you can see, Solomon is starting to become a very wealthy person. And part of this, I hate to say it, but part of this is probably because he built the temple. When you build a temple now, people come from all around to see the temple. And as they come into the land, then they'll need lodging, they'll need food. And so now Jerusalem is going to become a bustling metropolis of activity. And Solomon owns various pieces of property, and so he just becomes instantly wealthy. And the same is true with the royal family in Britain. They own a lot of downtown London, and they own a lot of properties. And as the value of London goes up, their value goes up. Nobody can calculate the wealth of the royal family, the royal British family, because some of the wealth are in artifacts that are priceless. So how do you calculate the wealth of priceless things? But for example, the royal family they still own some properties, but they made a negotiation with the British government to not pay taxes on some of this stuff. So they give it back to the British government. But at one time, things like St. Paul's Cathedral, museums, all sorts of things in downtown London were owned by the royal family. And to this day, Buckingham Palace is probably not, I think a lot of these properties, they gave back to Britain so they wouldn't have to pay taxes, but then Britain has to do the upkeep, which is kind of weird. But that's what they do. So Solomon has lots of money, and he creates slaves. Anybody that's not an Israelite, you're a slave. And so you're now going to work, but for the trusted officials, for the other positions that are part of being in a community of people, commanders of the armies, government officials, officers, captains, all those things, it has to be Israelites. And so he does that. And verse 24. After Pharaoh's daughter had come up from the city of David to the palace Solomon had built for her, he constructed the terraces. City of David is Bethlehem, right? 3 times a year, Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on the altar he had built for the Lord, burning incense before the Lord along with them, and so fulfilling the temple obligations. King Solomon also built ships at Ezion-Geber, which is near Elath and Edom, on the shore of the Red Sea. And Hiram sent his men, sailors who knew the sea, to serve in the fleet with Solomon's men. They sailed to Ophir and brought back 420 talents of gold, which they delivered to King Solomon. So he's becoming a pretty powerful ruler. He's got wealth, he's got people, he's got slaves. His kingdom has a temple, he has a palace, and now he can build a navy and go to Tyre, the king of Tyre, Hiram, and learn how to run a navy. He's becoming a force. And you may think this is a great thing, but the problem is that, I shouldn't say the problem is, but is he doing it because to keep his people safe? Is he doing it to honor God, or is he doing it to just continue to expand his kingdom because he's power hungry? And the problem with becoming power hungry is pretty soon all the other neighboring people are going to start worrying about you. Because when you have that much power, are you going to use it responsibly? And should we fear you? Are you doing the right thing? Are you honest? Are you upright? All the things that you want in a neighboring town that has that much power. Right now, the United States is a superpower. Are we using our superpower status wisely? Are we doing it because we really are trying to be good neighbors to the world, or are we doing it because we just want more and more power? And of course, who knows the answer to that question, right? I think as sinful people, right, we always want power more than anything. And true power doesn't come from wealth and status. It doesn't. It comes from God. That's where true power lies. And so we don't need all the trappings of the world to be in the world. Just put God first. Let him deal with the big stuff. We deal with the little stuff. All right. I think we'll end it there. And we'll close with a quick prayer. Gracious God, thanks for this day. And until we meet again, keep us in your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. So as I said at the beginning, we will not meet all of next week, but we'll get back together on Jennifer's birthday on the 15th of July. And hopefully Jennifer and I will be here. We still haven't purchased the tickets back. But I'm pretty sure I know how to do that. I mean, I know how to do it. I'm pretty sure. I'm having trouble purchasing my ticket to get there because it's part credit card, part gift card, and it's not taking it. So I'm kind of, who knows? Anyway, let me find my cursor here. If I can find it, there it is. All right. So, hey, thanks for joining me, and have a great weekend and a great week next week. And we'll see you later. Bye.